This video covers the fundamental question of what it is legal research actually is. In this era where we can just pick up our phone, give it an address, and our phone will tell us where we're going and how long it'll take and are there going to be any interruptions along the way, it's very easy to get used to information always being available, always at our fingertips. But not all information can be obtained so easily. And in the law, a lot of the information is information we have to work for, we have to dig for it, and we have to use a particular set of methods to locate that. And it's important that you understand that research is a multifaceted craft. It's part reason, part intuition, and lots of hard work as well. But it's not something that's a simple matter of just learning how to do it. It's a matter of learning a lot of related techniques and then getting experience and applying those over time. In your early stages of learning as a law student, you probably focus pretty much on where can I find the information, or where can I find the citations I need to cite an authority. And that's the baby steps, that's where you begin. But there's a lot more to research than this, because in a real world scenario you don't have a study guide or a textbook to go to. And most of the questions that are going to confront you as a legal professional are ones that don't have a clear answer that you can just look up. So, my way to define legal research is as follows: evidence-based problem solving in the field of law. So let's break that down into its three components. The first thing we'll look at is problem solving. Let's start in the middle. Law is not just about looking up an answer or finding information. It's about solving a problem. And it's a problem that requires the application of method. It requires focused work, focused practice. And it also involves iteration. It involves a process by which you go back and revise your method and narrow your focus, and you constantly improve what you do. So it's not something that you can really set up a 10-point do this scale, because you have to change that method as you go. As you learn more, you become more focused and you're able to narrow what it is that you do. So as with all forms of problem solving, it does involve a balance of creative work and disciplined work. You need to be able to plan, you need to be able to think things through clearly, and you need to be able to build on your successes and your failures as you go throughout there. So it's about understanding that process, and it's something that's complex. If it was something you could just Google and find the answer to, no one's going to pay you to do that. So professionally speaking, legal research requires much more than just locating a piece of information or finding out what the law is. There's a whole lot of understanding that goes into that as well. Let's move on to the second factor, evidence-based. What does that mean? Like other professional and academic research, all your evidence, all your opinions and your ideas are based on an understanding of the work of others. You don't just come up with a brilliant idea and say, this is a fantastic idea, isn't it creative? And everyone goes, yeah, let's all do that. That sounds like a great idea. Evidence-based research means you have to be able to produce the proof. You have to be able to produce the evidence. And that is what comes out of research. Now, research can be primary or it can be secondary. You can actually go out and do the research yourself, although you are really unlikely to be doing that at undergraduate level. What you're most likely to be doing is secondary research, where you're looking at the published research of others, either they be researchers or it be the work that's published in the authorities, in legislation or in cases, but you're assembling the work of others and you're putting it together to build that evidence base that you need to convince others of the opinion that you're expressing, your judgment that you say, I believe this is the case and here is the evidence I have to back it up. One of the things about research also is that usually you will uncover contradictory evidence. You won't find one clear answer. And this is where judgment becomes very important, because you are then called upon to be able to weigh those different parts of evidence and to be able to form an opinion on which is the strongest and which is the most convincing, which is the best evidence that is available to you. So the third of the aspects of the definition is the field of law. Now, the field of law is broad, it's complex, and it covers everything from the most formal laws entrenched in something like a constitution, down to all sorts of informal rules and guidelines and codes of behaviour. It's messy and and in the globalised world, it's cross-jurisdictional. We no longer live in a world where we could really think of the law as simply being this bubble that most people lived in and never went out of. The internet means that we communicate with, we do business with people all around the world all of the time. Once upon a time, well before my time, lawyers could master an area of the law within a jurisdiction, within a specialised topic area, and all they needed to know was what they would have in that specialised field. The world has changed, and the world keeps changing, and we need to produce graduates, not necessarily who know the law, but know how to find the law, and know how to find the law as it keeps changing. Also, when we're talking about the field of law, we also need to acknowledge that law intersects with other fields of study as well, other disciplines, other professions, and we need to be able to communicate across those disciplines, and at least to be able to understand the basics of the disciplinary research in those other fields as it pertains to what we do. We can't simply put our hands over our ears and say, well, if it's not in a law report, it doesn't pertain to us. Again, the world has become complex, and we expect our legal professionals to have a broad understanding of how law fits into the broader fields of knowledge. So that's the three components. Law is evidence-based, it's problem-solving, and it's within the field of law. Now, it might be a good time to refute a few misconceptions that some students have when they come into studying legal research. First of all, legal research is not Googling or looking stuff up. It's about understanding. And your starting point is looking stuff up, but you need to read, you need to understand, you need to do a lot of hard work beyond that. It's not just simply a matter of popping out your phone, Googling an answer, and then saying, this is the answer. As I mentioned previously, if the answer was that easy to solve, no one is going to pay you to do it. They can do that for themselves. Second, and this is a related point, legal research is not about finding information, it's about establishing understanding. So it's not really enough to be able to say, it's not an exam. You can't just parrot off the details and say, what are the three principles from Smith & Jones? The three principles are A, B, and C. Now that may get you somewhere in exams, particularly in your first year, but as a legal professional, you have to be able to understand more about those things. You have to be able to demonstrate an understanding and to be able to apply that knowledge. Again, it's not just looking stuff up. It's not just uncovering information. It's about understanding the field. Third misconception, there's no single answer to any worthwhile problem. Most worthwhile problems will have lots of connected and different answers to them, which require some choices along the way. So it's not really a matter of, again, like an exam, saying, well, we have a model answer in mind and you have to basically come up with the answer that's the same as ours. In reality, and within legal research, you're generally going to have multiple paths to a solution and multiple different ways of solving that problem. And that's a good thing. And that's where being able to be intellectually agile and being able to change as you go and to learn from your progress becomes very, very important. And again, the final misconception people often have is they often think of law as being very certain. The law is this, and I'll look it up in the law book and I'll find out what the law is. Law is something that's shifting, it's conditional, it's something that changes. Now, many areas of law are quite certain, but they're not the areas that anyone is required to do research in, and they're certainly not the areas anyone will pay you to do research in. The areas that are the key areas for research and the most interesting areas of law are where things are uncertain. Where the answer is not yes or no, the answer is rather, well, it depends. And therein lies what we do as legal researchers. We find out what we mean when we say it depends, and we flesh out that topic in more detail. All right, so that's what legal research isn't. It isn't just Googling and looking stuff up. I know I've mentioned that before. Here's some examples of what legal research might entail. Here's a series of questions you might ask as a legal researcher, and these start at the most simple and move their way through to the most complex. So the most basic question you may ask is, what is the law as it stands? So, proposed set of behaviours, We know it's regulated by law. What does the law say about that behaviour? Does it allow it or not allow it? And that's basically the basic starting point of legal inquiry. The second layer of questioning is, does the law achieve its objectives? So if the law is supposed to moderate or regulate this behaviour, does it work? Is it actually achieving the aims it was designed to set out? Or are people misusing the law or bending the law? Or is the law simply ineffectual? The next layer is, how does the law operate? Let's look practically. Let's not just look at whether or not the law works. Let's look at how it works, how it operates, how it's effective or ineffective. Next level of complexity, level 4. Why does the law operate in this way? And that's a much deeper question. If it's working or not working, why is it working or not working? How is its connection to other social systems influencing this? And the final question, and this is something that is of great relevance to the legal research course that you're studying right now, is, do we need to change the law? Is this a situation where the law is so out of step with of what its objectives are and what our society believes it should do that we need to fix it? Maybe it's a big fix. Maybe the law needs to be repealed. Maybe it's a small fix. Maybe there needs to be a new precedent that interprets and fleshes out that law, that provides that extra space for meaning and interpretation that the ratio and obiter of judge-made law allows us to do. Whichever solution we use to change the law or accept the law, we need to ask that question, is, do we need to do something about the law as it stands? Okay, so this has been a very, very brief overview of what legal research is. Obviously, you're going to do a lot more of specific exercises and activities around developing your skills in this field. But that set of questions, I think, is a good starting point to think about law beyond simply a question of Googling an answer. When you approach these questions, what you do as a researcher is design a methodology. You come up with a tool that you construct in order to help you solve that problem. And you draw in all sorts of different skills and abilities to design that tool or that plan, and that sets the foundations of how you go about solving it. And you do this in a clear and methodical way. One of the things that's very important about legal research is that you have a plan before you go in, so you don't waste your time. So you do it in the most efficient way as possible. So that's legal research. It's a skill that you can learn, it's something we can teach, but it's not something that you will master in 12 weeks. It's something that you improve, and it takes a lifetime of dedicated work and practice to improve your skills. And this is just the starting point.